Big focus this hour. The US has released the Religious Freedom Index, where they have placed India as a country of concern. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has released the State Department's 2023 Religious Freedom Report for over 200 countries and said there was a concerning increase in hate speech, anti-conversion laws, demolition of homes and places of worship for people belonging to minority groups in India. Now, this comes from a country which is much less diverse than us and has witnessed over 6,000 gun violence deaths in the past 6 months. So why doesn't India, which is much more vibrant and diverse than the US, release its own report? Joining us at this point is Ambassador Bhashwati Mukherjee, former diplomat. We also have Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, joining us live. Rashmi Samant, author and former president of Oxford Students' Union, is joining us live. Monica Verma, international affairs expert, is also with us on the broadcast. Let me bring you in here first. Ambassador Mukherjee, on what you make of the contents of this report. What was your first reaction when you heard about India's position?
Well, Uday, I had a feeling of deja vu. This has happened many times. We've discussed it many times. The point here is that, first of all, these reports, you have to ask yourself, Uday, how are they compiled? It's done in a vast country like India, 1.2 billion people. If only a fraction, perhaps those who have a problem with the present government, are asked to give their views, it naturally causes a distorted report which gives a completely wrong impression of this vast, diverse country that is ours, syncretic in nature and with tolerance for all. Some of the issues that have been singled out are particularly hurtful, considering that in United States, as rightly pointed out, there has been institutionalized racism against black people, against Hispanics, against Asians. There has been Hindu phobia, there has been Islamophobia, and several other very grave incidents, including the fact that they don't have enough gun control, so they have a lot of little kids being shot regularly, etc. Under those circumstances, it is not clear to me how Mr. Anthony Blinken, at the end of virtually the end of the tenure of President Biden, with no guarantee at all that he's going to be re-elected, we're going to hear the two presidential candidates debating each other, I presume, this later tonight, how he can make such comments to a newly elected government, Modi 3.0, on such a factual basis, which is so narrow in content that it would never fit into India. Why doesn't he make such comments about countries which are not democracies and which happen to be very close strategic allies of the United States? We are a very close strategic ally and we are not there. As far as India making its own report is concerned, Uday, this is something that we have discussed ad nauseum in your channel, that it is high time that we compiled a group of international experts and Indian experts, and we compiled these kind of reports, whether it's freedom of minorities, freedom from hunger index, so many others, where India is given sometimes a ranking below Afghanistan, sometimes India is given a ranking below North Korea. Nobody in India, Uday, cares remotely about these rankings. But they do impact our international standing in the United Nations and other bodies. They impact international media's perspective of India, and they impact people living outside India who've never been to India. They give a completely wrong and distorted vision of India. So yes, I agree with you that we should do that. We should do it as soon as possible. And at the same time, we should immediately issue a press statement on behalf of the government, which would point out these distortions and indicate that we completely reject these kind of distortions and this kind of manipulation of statistics to give the impression that we suffer from religious bigotry, which we certainly don't. We are a secular country. Uday.
Yes. Also, Madhav Nalapat is with us live. Madhav Nalapat, at the end of the day, of course, this is a pattern. There have been statements made by the United States and various other Western nations on religious freedom and on, of course, those concerns in India, according to them, multiple times, which is why this report would be shocking for many, but not surprising.
Well, it's neither shocking nor surprising to me or to clearly to Ambassador Mukherjee. The fact is that this has become a routine. And the reality is that since 2014, the the number of significant incidents of communal violence has gone down very, very sharply. Previously, there were a large number of communal incidents taking place. In fact, sometimes large groups of people got involved between two communities, and these were plainly religious in motivation. But now, after 2014, the figures will show that such events have taken place with far less frequency. Yes, there are some individual cases, and the individual cases, of course, cut all ways. You have sometimes, Hindus doing something to Muslims, Muslims to Hindus, vice versa. But you must remember that a large number of these cases is not really religious in nature. The origin is in financial disputes, property disputes, certain friendship issues, and things like that. So it's not really religious in nature. So I'd like to say that, it's not surprising that this kind of report is churned out. And frankly, they have a tremendous amount of focus on India, especially after 2014, which I think shows that the policy of the Indian government, which essentially has been to ensure that previously individuals used to come from different faiths and make very hateful speeches about the Hindu community in particular, as a way of trying to persuade individuals to convert to their own communities. That kind of visa has sharply slowed down, and I think that must be one of the driving forces behind this kind of talk that, oh, they have gone up since 2014, when the fact is they have gone down significantly. Uh, Stray cases here and there, yes, but the kind of communal violence that we saw during the past decades is absent. But I think this is something that is to be expected. And yes, of course, India can show the facts. India can show that this report is wrong. But may I also add that I think this particular the organization that is presenting this report, it seems to have a particular bias, and it seems to have bias very specifically against anybody who is not belonging to one of the Abrahamic faiths. Now, all faiths are equal. All faiths are completely, valid, depending on the belief of the believer. But I think this particular agency is really concentrating a lot on that, concentrating on individual cases, and very importantly, trying to create a narrative about the Modi government that is not at all correct. And that narrative is not helping India-US relations at all, especially when the Secretary of State also becomes part of that narrative.
Yes, absolutely. Let me, in fact, go across to Rashmi Samant then at that point. Rashmi, what do you believe has led the US to interpret India as a country of concerns, in this religious freedoms report?
Well, I think following from what the other panelists have already told, I do respectfully agree with them that if you look at the facts, then clearly, the incidents of communal violence have gone down in the past decade as compared to the sort of history that we've seen over the past couple of decades before 2014. But this sort of, deliberate attempt to form a sort of a narrative that a non-existent environment of increased communal violence exists, I think is motivated by malicious intent. And that malicious intent is clearly there to put down the country that Bharat has become today. Back in the day, we weren't a serious contender in terms of the, economic pyramid. We were at 10 and, we were faring very poorly. But now we've gone from 10 to 5 in the past 10 years, and that's a serious concern to the Western powers because we are leaving them behind. and causing at a great cost to their economies. So I think that is something that has always motivated the Western powers to target or not some of the countries that they have. You can clearly see the countries that they've gone to war to. It was all about resources and sort of having this monopoly of resources and maintaining their place in the economy. So I think this is all driven by the fact that we are doing extremely well and that we are on the path of progress. And this is their way of pulling us down. This is their way of shaming us in a way with, malicious content, with misinformation, as to, sort of try and halt our progress. But I think that is something that will not happen. India is on its path, and the Indian government not just has to, counter these facts, but also I think these departments need to be sued in the International Court of Justice, because we simply cannot take allegations like these against us anymore, and there need to be consequences, and we need to, raise these issues in all international platforms and put out the facts that we will not take this standing down. And, one or two stray comments in the media just won't cut countering this sort of rampant misinformation that they're, spreading to bring our country down. Only recently we saw how there was some sort of an attempt to meddle with our elections. These kinds of, reports try to alter public opinion from within the country and abroad, and try to hamper the progress of a country. And it's akin to, tampering an election, but, this is sort of a long scheme plan to sort of tamper public opinion and then sort of tamper the progress in the long run. So I think we need to seriously come up with a mechanism to address it using international platforms and not take such allegations lying down. And these are, I think, my opinion on this current matter.
Yes, Monica Verma, as far as, of course, the report goes, it's not something new. It's again not something surprising or shocking, as Professor Nalapat said earlier. But how do you believe it should be responded to? How should it be rebutted, in your opinion?
I think I have a long-standing opinion on this matter. I've always maintained in all my articles and whatever I research on, that as a democracy, we are not China, that we can close down our media, or we can just, close down all the opinion or use censorship to target such material which is coming into India. So as a democracy still, if you look at every other country in the world today which is a democracy, they are using fantastic ways of countering it. First of all, like everyone in the panel has said so far, that we also need institutions of our own. Like, what I don't understand is every country goes through, so many other problems, internal stability. In fact, their presidential debate is tonight, and I'm sure there are a lot of societal cleavages, which, even the American society is suffering from. But what is stopping India from finally taking cognizance of it all? Because see, we know our foreign policy right now is very, very, it's full of an independent streak. So in July first week, Prime Minister Modi will be traveling to Russia. It has not been officially confirmed yet, but yes, there are talks that India is also going to sign a military logistics agreement with Russia. So I think, when you are trying to have a foreign policy like that, which is going to make sure that India indeed rises as the third pole in international politics, at that time you need to also have, certain weapons in your own toolkit, so that when the same United States, which wants closer cooperation with India and Indo-Pacific, or they want to have, some other type of cooperation with you, especially, after the election concluded, there was a dialogue on technology as well. So on one hand, they do see us as a counter to China. On one hand, they do want to, want India's cooperation in Indo-Pacific as well. But then at the same time, despite being a partner with us, this is how they harm our interests. So during elections, there were reports of foreign interference. After that, they have used the Pannoon issue to target India and declare a Khalistani terrorist as someone whose freedom of speech should be protected. So I think these are very worrying issues. It's high time that we also have our own reports. We also have our own op-ed machinery. I think for every single issue that happens in United States or maybe UK or anywhere in the world, I think we also need to target them with, I think, 1,500 op-eds per day basis. Until we don't do that, unless we do not take an offensive position, I do not see how we can, actually be giving answer to them.
Okay. Is it time, Ambassador Mukherjee, to rebut this, to issue a strong reply to this report and counter it? Is it also time perhaps for India to mull its own such index, its own such report?
It's time for India first to look at everything in perspective. We are a colonized nation. We got our freedom when we were left partitioned, bleeding, and illiterate. We've made huge strides on our own from 1947 to the India that is Bharat of 2024. We've done it on our own. We are proud of our heritage and culture. We are proud of our people. And we have a constitution that is secular and guarantees rights to all its citizens. That being said, we have to also understand that we live in a hostile neighborhood, and to protect our freedom, as Gandhiji said, that we need to be constantly vigilant to guard our liberty. We need to develop strategic partnerships, which we have done. Our strategic partners are often at a loss on how to deal with our very rapid economic progress and our rapid emergence as a major power, so that we are no longer a sub-regional power confined by China and Pakistan to our sub-region. We are now a major power. We matter. So those countries that talk of strategic partnerships, including the United States, with whom we have a very important strategic partnership, at the same time take pot shots at us just to make sure that we don't get too big for our boots. It's as simple as that. It's a kind of checks and balance game they play with us. That checks and balance game to the land that produced Chanakya should never produce an overreaction. Every move of ours should be closely calculated, coldly calculated, never in emotion, always with a cold calculation. Yes to your suggestion that we bring out an index. No to the suggestion that we react to each and every allegation. Not at all. We will react to allegations when it's required, when it's the most embarrassing, when it will hurt them the most. Otherwise, we will first concentrate on becoming economically self-sufficient, the world's third largest economy, plug those gaps in our defense requirements, which still make us vulnerable to a concentrated Chinese attack on us from Tibet. Think of the chicken's neck, secure the northeast, make sure that traitors from within are dealt with properly, make sure that where there are areas of disturbance, including Manipur, are carefully and thoughtfully thought through, and then and only then we decide what to do. And most of all, Uday, we never discuss those options, in my perspective, on national television. That is too dangerous. We would be making our position clear to our enemies before we've even decided how to strategize. Uday.
Professor Nalapat, do you believe that there is a need to rebut this report, to issue a statement on it? And what about the clamour for our own index? Is that something that should be considered finally on various parameters of what we believe the world should be touched on?
Well, I'd like to agree with Ambassador Mukherjee that we need to be quite calm and calculated about this. Certainly, the United States and its NATO partners are not going to be very happy should the Prime Minister travel to Moscow and carry out the kind of agreement that our distinguished panelist has been talking about. But I have very long held the view that where Russia is concerned, India and Russia need to have a policy of mutually not assisting, anything against the other if that country is in a conflict. So we have not basically moved forward in assisting the other side, even though there was a lot of pressure on us to do so when this Ukraine-Russia conflict happened. And we expect that the Russians, as good friends of ours, will ensure that should we get into a conflict on our borders, that they will not interfere on the side of the adversary. And I think that is very likely. And I think this particular visit will help to ensure that. And that's very important because Russia is a major power. There's no question about it. Now, the fact is the Indo-Pacific is the key theater. Asia is now the key continent. Unfortunately, what has happened is the United States has joined, and Canada have joined European countries in making Asian countries such as Japan and South Korea follow their line in what is essentially a European war on Ukraine. And as a consequence, you are seeing, for example, President Putin visit Pyongyang. In my view, that visit was directly, and whatever consequences are going to follow, and there will be significant consequences, but they were directly related to the fact that South Korea has taken an adversarial position on the Ukrainian conflict, in contrast to, let's say, India. Neither Japan nor Japan has lost substantial access to cheap Russian energy, and that has harmed the Japanese economy, which is not doing well at all. So I only want to say that as far as we are concerned, we are very clear. Our interests are very much in favor of a secure, stable, and free Indo-Pacific. We are the two largest democracies in the world, India and the United States, are natural partners of each other. But that does not mean we are going to be dragged into every conflict that the United States and some of the other partners want us to be dragged into, nor do we expect the United States, quite frankly, to be dragged into certain conflicts that are subcritical in nature, by which I mean of a nature such that they do not affect the broad contours of Indo-Pacific security. I think that is a very carefully crafted foreign and strategic policy pursued by the government, and I think it's something that is really something that should be welcomed and supported. Uday.
Yes. At the end of the day, of course, this, as I said earlier, this is not a new report. This is not a new occurrence which is happening. Rashmi Samant, has the time come to come up with our own indexes, to come up with our own reports? Would that be an effective counter, or would you suggest something else?
I do believe that we need to come up with our own institutions. Institution building is absolutely important, and that's a step towards decolonizing our community. And I think it is necessary for us to start. We should have started a long time ago for us to build a credible way to, not just measure ourselves, but also the world. And that, we can have a parallel system that will give our own people a standing in the global order rather than always being judged by the parameters of the others. I do believe that in every other field, it's becoming increasingly a necessity, be it education or other. So I think it's necessary for us to come up with it, because other countries who control these indexes have a way of tweaking the parameters in a way to, benefit them more than the others, economically, socially, anywhere in the global order. So I think it's necessary for us to come up with our own system, and it's high time that, we carefully build it and grow it in a way that it can become a formidable, index in the next couple of decades, so that the future generations do not have to suffer the way that we currently are in the absence of such institutions.
All right, Monica, I'll leave the last word to you.
I think all the panelists before me have already put it so well that, we should not be reactionary, but we must definitely start building our own strength to this effect. Being a democracy should be an advantage for us. It should actually be in our favor rather than it becoming a nuisance for us, that they can just enforce regime change operations through media and take our audience for granted and just show them their side of the story. So I think narrative building and narrative shaping is something that we must start doing now, because all the great powers in the world who become great till date, one of the things that they had on their side, even if you go to the Cold War, I think Soviet Union fell the day it stopped taking propaganda and stopped taking narrative building seriously. So I think the Cold War was won because of the kind of stories that were coming out from US and the way it portrayed itself as the hero. So I think taking lessons from the history will serve us in a very good way if we ourselves can manage the narrative while we are rising. This narrative making and narrative shaping is also important, besides making tangible, capability, besides working on a comprehensive national power.
All right.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.